The gold. The gold.
We're actually going to Fort Knox to see if the gold is there. Because maybe somebody stole the gold. Tons of gold. Wouldn't that be terrible if we opened it up and there was no gold there?
If the gold isn't there, we're going to be very upset.
The gold was there when I visited it. I hope nobody's moved it. I'm sure they haven't.
I find it hard to believe. Reason for it was the last pictures that were done were very grainy. I think that if we would have had it, we would have shown it a long time ago. Without seeing that, I'm thinking that it might not be there, or it's a lot lower than what we thought.
All it takes is one lie, one silent betrayal to bring down an empire built on trust. We lived our lives under an illusion that Fort Knox was untouchable, that America's word was gold, that the system was permanent. But permanence is the first casualty of forgetting how fragile trust really is. The first crack came quietly, no collapse, no sirens, just a quiet announcement and an even quieter silence afterward. If Fort Knox is empty, this isn't about missing gold. It's about missing faith, missing futures. Because when trust vanishes, it doesn't just leave a void, it pulls everything else into the darkness with it. So ask yourself, if the gold is really there, why not prove it? And if it's not, how long do you think the illusion will hold? Or maybe, just maybe, the vault isn't just hiding missing gold. Maybe it's hiding something even more dangerous. The truth. That sometimes people would rather believe a beautiful lie than face an unbearable reality. Fort Knox, the most dangerous illusion of them all. We were told America was safe, that behind every dollar we spent was strength, and behind every promise made was power. And at the center of it all stood a vault so legendary, so impenetrable, it became a myth unto itself. Fort Knox, a name that meant security, certainty, trust. 8,000 tons of gold, or so we were told, more than any other nation on Earth. But what if the real story isn't about what Fort Knox protects, but what it hides? Because hidden beneath the myths is a war no one talks about. A war not fought with bombs or bullets, but with silence, with shadows, with the slow, invisible erosion of something far more dangerous than any army could take away. Trust. Behind those steel walls, is it safety or is it silence? To find the truth, we have to go back. Back to the moment when America's faith was bought at a terrible price. The Roaring Twenties ended with a crash heard around the world. Banks folded, fortunes vanished, families lined up outside closed doors, begging to withdraw what little they had left. But few realized how fragile their money truly was, because back then, a dollar wasn't just paper. It was a promise, backed by real gold, a promise now on the verge of collapse. In the face of national panic, President Franklin D. Roosevelt made a decision that would change the course of history, a decision born from fear and disguised as patriotism. Executive Order 6102. Overnight, private ownership of gold became illegal. Citizens were forced, under threat of prison, to turn in their gold. Coins passed down through generations. Wedding bands, savings for unborn grandchildren, gone. It wasn't just wealth they handed over, it was faith, hope, security, all surrendered to rebuild a system they were told they could still trust. But taking the gold wasn't enough. They needed a symbol, something so formidable, so intimidating, that the public would never dare question where their gold had gone. So deep in the hills of Kentucky, they built a fortress to guard what remained of America's soul. Fort Knox wasn't just a vault, it was a monument to trust, a concrete reassurance that the dream wasn't dead, it was merely being protected. But trust built on fear is fragile, and the louder the symbols shouted security, the more dangerous it became to ask, was there still anything left inside? For decades, no one dared to question it, until the cracks finally broke through the silence. For decades after Fort Knox was sealed, America flourished. Suburbs rose from farmland. Factories hummed. Dreams were built on the simple belief that behind every dollar stood gold, locked away in an impenetrable vault. But by the late 1960s, that belief started to crack. The Vietnam War, drained not just blood, but billions. Inflation spiraled, trust in government crumbled. And then came the moment that should have made everyone stop and question everything. The dollar was no longer tied to gold, it was tied to nothing but faith. No full inventory, no independent audit, no random inspections, just a carefully staged theater, and a nervous hope that the public would stop at asking questions. Congressman Ron Paul later called it exactly what it was, a farce. A photo op, not proof. After that day, no real inspection was ever allowed again. Just silence. And silence, in a system built on trust, is louder than any alarm. Because once the world began doubting the gold, the entire system started to unravel. At the end of World War II, the victors didn't just rebuild nations, they rebuilt money itself. At Bretton Woods, the rules of global finance were redrawn. Every major currency would tie itself to the US dollar, and the dollar would be tied to gold. For a time, the system worked. America grew stronger. The world trusted the dollar. Trust in Fort Knox wasn't just national, it was global. But beneath the prosperity, a silent crisis grew. America was printing more money than it had gold to cover. Debt piled up. Wars were fought on credit. Promises were made on paper, but gold couldn't keep pace. Other nations noticed. They didn't want dollars anymore. They wanted real gold, bar for bar, ton for ton. One by one, countries began calling the bluff, and gold quietly drained from America's vaults. And then came the moment that shattered it all. August 15th, 1971. President Nixon, in a single sentence, severed the link between the dollar and gold. Temporarily, became permanent. From that day forward, the dollar wasn't tied to gold, it was tied to belief. Belief that somewhere locked deep in Kentucky, America's promises were still real. Belief that behind the vault walls, gold still gleamed. But belief is a currency even more fragile than paper. And when belief runs out, when silence grows louder than answers, people start asking dangerous questions. If Fort Knox is untouched, if the gold is right where they say it is, why won't they just prove it? No full audits, no random inspections, no cameras allowed past a single stage-managed photo op. When the truth is hidden behind layers of secrecy, suspicion fills the gaps. At first, the whispers were easy to ignore, but the longer you listen, the louder they become. And the theories start to feel less like paranoia and more like possibilities. 1. The gold is gone theory. The simplest and most horrifying theory is this: there's nothing left. The gold was sold, drained away to prop up decades of wars, bailouts, and secret deals. Since the 1974 inspection, not one independent audit has ever been allowed. Even Treasury Secretary Mnuchin's 2017 visit ended with a joke, not proof. Assumptions aren't evidence, and jokes aren't audits. But maybe it's worse than that. Maybe it's not just missing, maybe it's still there, but it's fake. The second theory is, gold is replaced with tungsten, a metal nearly identical to gold in weight. In 2009, fake gold bars surfaced in Hong Kong, traced back to suspicious US supply chains. What if Fort Knox's shelves are full, but full of lies? Tungsten-plated counterfeits, designed to maintain the illusion while the real treasure disappeared long ago. And if you think that's outrageous, consider this. What if the gold was never stolen, but quietly loaned away? The third theory is loaned or leased to foreign banks theory. Some believe the gold wasn't stolen, it was strategically leased, swapped and loaned out to foreign banks behind closed doors, propping up the dollar and suppressing gold prices for decades. Former Congressman Ron Paul didn't just suggest an audit because he distrusted government. He suspected a financial sleight of hand no one dared confirm. But even that might be generous, because in the deepest versions of the story, the gold wasn't misplaced or mishandled, it was surrendered. The fourth theory is it was handed over to global elites, transferred, not to Americans, but to global financial institutions. No oversight, no records the public could ever verify. A quiet surrender, exchanging real, tangible wealth for power, influence, and eventually, dependency. If true, Fort Knox doesn't belong to America anymore. It belongs to forces we'll never see. And even for those hoping for a less catastrophic truth, the so-called moderate theory offers little comfort. The next theory is only a fraction remains. Maybe some gold remains, but nowhere near 8,000 tons. Maybe over decades it was drained slowly, sold, swapped, used to patch political disasters and secret wars. Remember when Germany asked for their gold back in 2012? They only requested a fraction, and America said it would take 7 years to deliver. If the gold was just sitting there, why the delay? Of course, there's always the possibility the truth is stranger than we dare imagine. There is a bonus theory that has been trending recently. It is the alien technology theory. Some believe Fort Knox doesn't house gold at all anymore. They believe it houses something, not of this earth, advanced materials, unknown technology. Whistleblowers like Bob Lazar claim the US possesses extraterrestrial assets too dangerous to expose. And if you had to hide the ultimate secret, wouldn't it make sense to hide it where no one dares look too closely? I don't know which theory is true. Maybe none of them, maybe all of them in pieces. But when the stakes are this high, and the silence this loud, even the wildest possibilities start to sound sane. On the surface, the illusion still holds. The stores are full, the markets are open, the headlines say nothing's wrong. But if you look closer, you'll see the cracks. While politicians avoid the subject, something strange is happening behind the scenes. Thousands of gold bars, quietly flown from London to New York, banks claiming arbitrage profits, but insiders whisper a different reason. That the real metal is running short, that contracts are about to break. That somewhere, someone is scrambling to cover up a hole too big to patch. And then came the public cracks. President Trump, a man who holds the nuclear codes, demanded an audit of Fort Knox. Elon Musk, a billionaire with satellites pointed at every corner of the earth, publicly mocked the vault's existence. If the system was strong, if the gold was safe, why are two of the most powerful men in the country suddenly questioning it? No real audits, no independent verifications, just carefully staged visits, smiles for the camera, and doors that remain firmly closed. When a fortress refuses to show its treasure, is it still a fortress? Or is it just a monument to a lie no one dares look too closely at? Because the longer the silence stretches, the more dangerous the answer becomes. What if this really is the greatest illusion in modern history? A bluff so big, so dangerous, that even questioning it feels like treason. Because if the gold is gone, if Fort Knox is empty, then we're not just looking at a missing asset. We're staring down the collapse of global trust itself. And yet, now, after decades of silence, two of the most powerful figures in the country, Donald Trump and Elon Musk, suddenly want to see the gold? Why now? Will they actually demand a real audit? Or will it just be a photo op behind closed doors, a handshake, a wink, and a black and white picture for Twitter? Because an audit isn't a tour. An audit means weighing every bar, verifying serial numbers, checking chain of custody records, opening sealed vaults, inspecting 27.5-pound bricks of gold, one by one. It takes time, teams, transparency. So the real question is, do they want the truth, or do they just want the illusion to hold a little longer? And I have to be honest, I'm not sure this is the moment to test it. The US economy is barely breathing. Inflation is high. Wages are stagnant. AI and automation are quietly erasing entire industries. People are scared of losing their jobs, their savings, their future. And at the same time, BRICS is gaining ground. China's stacking gold like it knows something we don't. Russia is building a financial lifeboat outside the dollar. If we audit Fort Knox now and come up short, America loses more than gold. We lose leverage. We lose confidence. We lose the very thing that keeps the dollar alive. Belief. So maybe the timing is bad, but if we're willing to audit student loan forgiveness, pandemic relief, and government programs down to the penny, why not audit the gold? Why not answer the question that's haunted us for decades? Just don't let Doge handle the audit. And while we're at it, would you trust Elon Musk to verify the truth? Because when a billionaire and a polarizing president suddenly want access to the world's most secret vault, Either something big is coming, or something big is already gone. So I leave you with this. What if the vault really is empty? What if we've built an empire on belief, and the moment we look too closely, it all comes crashing down? Because illusions don't die slowly. They vanish in an instant. And Fort Knox might just be the most dangerous illusion of them all.